10,000 players logged in and none could log out. When Sword Art Online burst onto screens in 2012, it wasn't just another anime, it was a phenomenon. A revolutionary virtual reality MMORPG turned prison, where death in the game meant death in real life. The rules were simple, and at the same time terrifying. Clear all 100 floors of Aincrad or die trying. The Aincrad arc, spanning the first 13 episodes, thrust us into this digital crucible. Every floor a new threat, every battle a life on the line. With its brutal premise and breathtaking world, it promised a deep dive into human fear, resilience, and the blurred line between reality and illusion. This was a story that could have definite psychological sci-fi, and yet it ended abruptly. The towering castle of Aincrad, rich with mystery, danger, and untapped emotion, was reduced to a backdrop. The arc rushed to its conclusion, leaving behind questions, missed opportunities, and a world barely explored. Why? Why did such a gripping tale, so full of potential, wrap up so quickly? As a longtime reader of the Sword Art Online light novels, The Prince presents a reason why Sword Art Online's Aincrad arc was too short. The first reason lies in its original conception. Heiki Kawahara, the author of the Sword Art Online light novel series, initially wrote the Aincrad story as a standalone piece for a competition. Due to exceeding the competition's length limitation, it was released online instead. This origin story evidently shaped the narrative structure. The focus was on delivering a concise, self-contained story with a clear beginning, middle, and end. The early volumes, and consequently the initial portion of the series, prioritized key events and the central relationship between Kirito and Asuna, rather than providing an exhaustive exploration of every facet of Aincrad. This rapid pacing creates a sense of lost opportunity for us. Aincrad as a setting is incredibly rich in potential. Each of the 100 floors could have offered unique environments, challenges, and storylines. Imagine intricate floor designs, or complex social dynamics between player communities, political intrigue, economic systems within the game, and a deeper exploration of the psychological toll of being trapped in a virtual world for so long. And if you really think this way, I'm glad you clicked on this video, because I believe there is something important that might have been overlooked by the world itself. There is actually another reason why the Aincrad arc in Sword Art Online fell short, and this reasoning doesn't just apply to Aincrad, but to all arcs that came before Alicization. Sword Art Online isn't truly about the game, it's about Kirigaya Kazuto. Since the beginning, this story wasn't about Aincrad or virtual worlds. It's about the protagonist Kirito and his growth as a person. While we might wish for more depth in the world of Aincrad, Kirito has always been masterfully developed within Sword Art Online, which was the main goal from the very beginning. This is a story about Kirigaya Kazuto. Sword Art Online was constructed not to be a grand, sweeping epic about a fictional world, but an introspective and character-driven story told through the experiences of its protagonist. If you are enjoying this video, let me know in the comments. I've been thinking of dedicating an entire video just to explore Kirito as a character, because honestly, he's one of the most interesting and well-developed protagonists in the isekai genre, especially when you analyze him from a light novel perspective. His development doesn't happen in just one moment, it spans across multiple arcs, with deep emotional shifts along the way. But just to give you a small preview, Kirito's character's development happens in two major phases, during Aincrad and after Aincrad. This shows that, even if the Aincrad arc was short, its main purpose was fully achieved. It was never meant to be a story about the world of Aincrad, but rather a first-person journey, the story of Kirito and his path. This includes not only Aincrad, but all arcs before the series' climax, Alicization, as Ion of the people who believe that everything before Alicization was built for Alicization, which is where we have the greatest deepening of Kirito as a person, and the most important piece of Sword Art Online, which is Yuju. That is why Alicization is the longest arc. I believe that everything before it is nothing more than a prologue to this arc. Characters like Klein, Silica, and Lisbeth, among others, aren't meant to be deeply explored as standalone individuals in the narrative of Sword Art Online. Their primary narrative function isn't to serve as fully fleshed out protagonists of their own arcs, but rather to illuminate different aspects of the central figure of the series, Kirito. Each one of them represents a piece of his emotional journey, helping to shape and reflect his inner development. Klein, for instance, represents a kind of older brother figure who stays morally grounded in the chaos of Aincrad. Silica's vulnerability triggers Kirito's protective instincts and allows him to confront his lingering guilt over the loss of the Moonlight Black Cats. Lisbeth's interactions with Kirito showcase his capacity for empathy and his ability to form meaningful bonds with others. They are all meaningful, but through the lens of how they relate to Kirito's personal growth. None of these characters are just background noise, they are satellites revolving around the emotional gravity of Kirito's experience. This storytelling principle stands even more profoundly in the case of Asuna. Asuna is the first person Kirito truly lets into his heart. She's not just a love interest, she is a fundamental part of his personal transformation. Through his bonds with her, we witness his shift from isolated survivor to someone capable of deep connection and love. That emotional intimacy is crucial, because it sets the foundation for the person Kirito will become later in the series. Everything in Sword Art Online is centered around Kirito, his feelings, his fears, his hopes, and his growth. It's a first-person story. The world may be wide, but we experience it through Kirito's eyes. The people we meet are those who matter to him, and the arcs we follow are those that contribute to his transformation. The actual narrative arc of Aincrad is not the 100 floors, it's Kirito's evolution from isolated survivor to someone capable of trust, love, and sacrifice. His trauma from the Moonlight Black Cats, his internal guilt about surviving while others die, his hesitant but growing bond with Asuna, and his ultimate willingness to fight, not just to survive, but for something he loves. These are the real milestones of Aincrad. Could it have been even better if it had been developed over a greater number of volumes or episodes? Absolutely, and I would have loved that. Perhaps that's precisely what Sword Art Online Progressive attempts to do. I can't say for sure, since I haven't read Progressive myself, but even so, the original concept was already fully presented in the Aincrad arc. It existed, it was conveyed, and in my view, it was executed effectively. Aincrad is a prologue in disguise. Many viewers treat Aincrad as the main arc of Sword Art Online, but it's really more of an extended prologue, a prologue masquerading as a main arc. Structurally, it introduces the stakes, the emotional themes, and the protagonist's core traits. This character-centric lens brings us to a key realization about the structure of Sword Art Online. The Aincrad arc wasn't shortened arbitrarily. It concluded because its role in Kirito's emotional arc had been fulfilled. Aincrad arc established his strength, flaws, and relationships, prepared him for what comes next, especially Alicization, where we see him stripped down, rebuilt, and truly challenged in ways Aincrad never could. So Aincrad ends quickly not because it wasn't compelling, but because his job was already done. It planted the seed. The rest of the series, especially Alicization, is where that seed finally grows. There is a genuine tension here. We all wanted a full exploration of Aincrad, but the story was never structured that way. You could imagine a different version of Sword Art Online where each floor is its own mini-arc, full of deep and side characters, but that's not what Kawahara Heiki wrote. In fact, the original light novel wasn't even published yet traditionally. It was a self-posted online after being rejected for being too long. The early Aincrad arc is a compressed narrative, streamlined to deliver maximum emotional resonance in minimum space. Would it have been cool to see all 100 floors in detail? Of course, but then we might have lost the elegance and forks of Kirito's internal journey. We'd risk trading emotional depth for world-building sprawl, and that's not what Sword Art Online was built to be. Aincrad's brevity reflects the story priorities, a fast-paced, emotionally driven character arc, not an expansive exploration of game mechanics or world design. That's for progressive. Kirito's development was the core, and Aincrad accomplished its mission with precision. It's easy to wish we had more of Aincrad, but when we step back and look at the grand arc of Kirito's journey and how it culminates so powerfully in Alicization, we start to see that every choice made in Aincrad wasn't a limitation, it was a foundation. So why was Aincrad arc too short? Because Aincrad was never the point. It was about a lone survivor learning how to care. Kirito, the swordsman. If you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing to the channel. What other direction would you have liked Sword Art Online to take? Let me know in the comments. This is a rich story that could have gone many different ways, for the better or for worse. But remember, the path the author chose isn't wrong, quite the opposite. He was able to convey exactly what he intended. Even though we can imagine how things might have been unfolded differently, the message of the series has been successfully delivered: freedom, identity, and personal growth through adversity in the digital age. And with that, I close the curtains and the showdown.